Before chocolate becomes a bar, a drink, a dessert, or a luxury gift, it begins as a seed inside the fruit of a tropical tree. That seed is the cocoa bean, also called cacao, and it comes from Theobroma cacao, the cacao tree. On its own, the bean does not look like the polished product people associate with chocolate. It must be harvested, fermented, dried, roasted, and processed before its familiar flavor appears. But hidden inside that small seed is an entire chain of history, agriculture, chemistry, trade, and culture. Cocoa is not just an ingredient. It is one of the rare foods that has been sacred, monetary, industrial, and global all at once. The cacao tree is native to the Amazon rainforest, and that origin explains a lot about why cocoa is so geographically limited today. Cacao is not a crop that can simply be planted anywhere demand exists. It needs warm tropical conditions, reliable humidity, and an environment that resembles the shaded forest systems where it evolved. The tree also requires patience. It can take around 5 years before it produces useful crops, even though a cacao tree may live for about 100 years. This slow rhythm makes cocoa very different from fast turnaround crops. When demand rises or harvests fail, supply cannot instantly catch up. Chocolate begins with a tree that moves on forest time. Cocoa's human story is far older than modern chocolate. The cacao tree was domesticated at least 5,300 years ago by the Mayo Shinchipe culture in South America, long before chocolate became a global commercial product. From there, cacao later became deeply important in Mesoamerica. This matters because cocoa was not first valued as a candy ingredient. It was consumed in cultural, social, and spiritual settings, often as a prepared drink rather than a sweet solid. One example of cacao's Mesoamerican food legacy is tejate, an indigenous Mexican drink. The ancient value of cacao came from its taste, rarity, ritual power, and social meaning, not from sugar or mass production. In pre-Hispanic Mesoamerica, cacao beans were so valuable that they were commonly used as currency. That fact changes how we should think about the bean. A currency must be recognizable, portable, scarce enough to matter, and widely accepted. Cacao beans met those conditions while also being useful as food. This gave them a double identity. They could be exchanged as wealth and consumed as nourishment or ceremony. That history helps explain why chocolate has long carried associations with status and desire. Modern branding did not invent cocoa's prestige from nothing. The bean already had symbolic and economic weight centuries before industrial chocolate existed. The transformation from cacao seed to chocolate flavor depends heavily on fermentation. Fresh cacao beans do not immediately taste like the cocoa people expect. After harvest, the beans are fermented and dried, and this process develops the chemical foundations of chocolate aroma and depth. Later, the dried beans can be roasted and ground into cocoa liquor, a thick paste that contains both cocoa solids and natural fat. Despite the name, cocoa liquor is not alcoholic. It is the base material from which cocoa butter and cocoa powder can be separated. Cocoa butter gives chocolate its smooth melt, while cocoa powder delivers concentrated flavor. One fermented seed becomes several essential products. The cocoa bean is rich in fat, and that fat is one reason chocolate has such a distinctive texture. Cocoa butter melts in a way that feels smooth and luxurious, which is central to the experience of eating chocolate. Cocoa powder, by contrast, carries much of the darker, more bitter, more aromatic side of cocoa. This split between fat and solids allows cocoa to appear in many forms: chocolate bars, baking cocoa, drinks, fillings, coatings, and cosmetics. The bean's value comes from this versatility. It is not only a flavor source. It is a structural ingredient, a texture builder, and a commodity that can be broken into different high-value components. There are 3 main varieties of cocoa plants: Forastero, Criollo, and Trinitario. Forastero is the most widely used, largely because it supports the scale needed by the global chocolate industry. Criollo is often treated as rarer and more delicate, while Trinitario is associated with hybrid characteristics. These names matter because cocoa is not a single uniform flavor. Like coffee, tea, or wine, the final taste depends on genetics, growing conditions, fermentation, drying, and roasting. A bean's origin can influence bitterness, acidity, aroma, and richness. Mass-market chocolate often hides those differences, but the agricultural reality is much more complex than one generic chocolate taste. Today, cocoa production is global in consumption but highly concentrated in farming. In 2024, the world produced about 5.8 million tons of cocoa beans. Ivory Coast alone accounted for roughly 38% of that total, followed by Ghana and Indonesia. Even more striking, West Africa produces nearly 81% of the world's crop. This is a major historical shift because cacao is native to the Americas, yet the modern chocolate supply depends heavily on African farms. That concentration creates vulnerability. Weather, disease, political decisions, farmer income, and land use in West Africa can affect chocolate prices and availability across the world. Cocoa is also a financial commodity. Cocoa beans, cocoa butter, and cocoa powder are traded on futures markets, where buyers and sellers manage expectations about future supply and price. London trading is especially connected with West African cocoa, while New York trading focuses more on Southeast Asian cocoa. This market structure shows how far cocoa has traveled from its ancient role as ceremonial drink and local currency. The bean is still a physical crop grown by farmers, but its price can be shaped by global demand, weather forecasts, harvest estimates, currency shifts, and investor behavior. The same seed connects village farms to international finance. Demand for cocoa products has grown at more than 3% annually since 2008, and that steady growth puts pressure on every part of the system. Consumers want chocolate to remain abundant, affordable, and consistent. Farmers, however, face the limits of land, climate, tree health, labor, and price volatility. Cocoa can contribute significantly to producing economies, including countries such as Nigeria, where it forms part of the agricultural export base. But economic importance does not automatically mean farmer prosperity. If prices are unstable or supply chains are unequal, the people closest to the crop may capture only a small share of the value created from it. One of the most serious concerns around cocoa is deforestation, especially in West Africa. When demand rises and farmers need productive land, forests may be cleared to make room for cacao farms. In the short term, this can increase cultivation. In the long term, it can damage biodiversity, reduce habitat, weaken soils, and make landscapes less resilient. Cocoa's forest origins create an irony. A tree that evolved in rich tropical ecosystems can become a driver of ecosystem loss when grown in simplified expansion systems. The challenge is not merely to produce more cocoa, but to produce it in ways that do not destroy the environmental conditions farming ultimately depends on. Agroforestry is one important path toward more sustainable cocoa. Instead of growing cacao in isolated monocultures, agroforestry integrates cacao with shade trees and other plants. This can support biodiversity, protect soil, moderate heat, and sometimes give farmers additional crops or income sources. It also reflects the tree's natural preference for more complex, shaded environments. But sustainable farming methods have to work economically, not just ecologically. If farmers cannot earn enough, they may not be able to adopt slower or more complex practices. Real sustainability has to connect environmental goals with farmer livelihoods, market incentives, training, and long-term support. Because the problems are so large, many initiatives now try to improve cocoa production. Programs such as the Swiss Platform for Sustainable Cocoa, the German Initiative on Sustainable Cocoa, and Belgium's Beyond Chocolate focus on issues like standards, traceability, and more responsible supply chains. By 2016, at least 29% of global cocoa production complied with voluntary sustainability standards. That is progress, but it also shows how much production remained outside those systems. Certification alone cannot solve every issue. The future of cocoa depends on whether the industry can align consumer demand, farmer income, forest protection, and transparent trade. The cocoa bean may be small, but the system around it is enormous. Cocoa's appeal is also chemical. The bean contains compounds such as flavanols, procyanidins, and other flavonoids. Flavanol-rich cocoa and chocolate products may have a small blood pressure-lowering effect, although that does not mean all chocolate is automatically healthy. Cocoa also contains theobromine and a small amount of caffeine, which contribute to its mildly stimulating character. These compounds are part of why cocoa feels so distinctive, bitter, aromatic, energizing, and deeply satisfying when processed well. From rainforest seed to sacred drink, from currency to commodity, from farmer livelihood to global dessert, cocoa carries a world inside it. Every piece of chocolate is the end of a much longer story. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.